Ready? Good morning, everyone. Happy Mother's Day. Before we start our talk, we have a special guest singer, Rai. She's actually, her first career is that she's a jewelry maker, but she also sings. So I will invite Rai to come and sing a song about Mother's Day.
Hello everyone, my name is Rai, and today I'm going to sing Mother of Mine. Mother mine, you gave to me all of my life to do as I please. I owe everything I have to you. I owe everything I have to you. Mother, sweet mother of mine. Mother of mine, when I was young, you showed me the right way. Things have to be done. Without your love, where would I be? Without your love, where would I be? Mother, sweet mother of mine. Mother, you gave me happiness, much more than words can I say. I pray the Lord that He may bless you. I pray the Lord that He may bless you. Mother, sweet mother of mine. Mother mine, now I am grown, now I can walk straight all on my own. I want to give you what you gave to me. I want to give you what you gave to me. Mother, sweet mother of mine. Mother, sweet mother of mine.
Thank you, Rai. Om Ya Devi Sarvabhuteshu Maturirupen Samstita Namastasye 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 Namo Namaha. We offer our salutations to the goddess, to the Divine Mother, who dwells within the hearts of all the beings as Mother. Our salutations to her again and again. So again, let me wish everyone a happy Mother's Day. We have a custom where we offer our Mother's Day greetings to all women and girls, not just those who actually have children. This is a very nice tradition, not just Mother's Day, but especially in the monastic community, that you'll see even old monks that they'll bow down before young girls and call them Mataji. Huh? That they'll try to see the Divine Mother. We try to see Holy Mother in all of them. So it's a very nice custom. So this is not that we're excluding the men, but this is especially this ode to motherhood, especially for all of our uh, women and girls, so all of the devotees, to all of you. We have this special debt of gratitude. So this is all meant for you. If we look at the life of Sri Ramakrishna, we find that he placed special emphasis on this relationship between the child and the mother. And we'll see throughout all of the different monastic traditions and in spiritual traditions, this is a very special relationship. There's something called a Shontan Bhav, this relationship that the child has to the mother. Uh, Sri Ramakrishna saw this as the paradigm for the relationship between the devotee and God. So when we look at all the women and mother, we think of the Divine Mother. We think of our Holy Mother also, and with great reverence, we bow down before them. So this, for Sri Ramakrishna, was the highest example of selfless love. If we like to think that uh, God as mother, God as mother represents selfless love, we have this ideal before us because the relationship between the mother and the small child is one where the mother doesn't expect anything in return. That the child can't even love the mother back, a very small infant. And it's just out of love that the mother will look after the child and nurse the child and wake up in the middle of the night and care for the child when the child is sick, how the mother suffers. Father suffers also, but especially the mother. So this idea of ahetiki bhakti, that a love that doesn't require anything or ask for anything in return. This is that Shontan Bhav also, that we worship God, those who follow this. And this was Ramakrishna's main spiritual attitude, is that he looked upon God as representing pure love, that a love that doesn't require anything or expect anything in return. And we can look upon ourselves as helpless children. This is the specialty of this Shantan Bhav, this attitude that uh, we can't do anything for ourselves. We rely wholly on the mother. There are other spiritual attitudes that require a great strength, Dasya Bhav. We spoke about this in our gospel class the other night. Those who have that feeling of strength, I can do anything, they'll take this attitude of the servant. But those who want to practice this attitude of full reliance, full reliance on God as mother, they'll practice this type of attitude, this Shantan Bhav. So this Sharanagati, this full surrender, uh, is embodied in this attitude. Sri Ramakrishna gives the beautiful example of the small kitten. The small kitten can't do anything uh, compared to the baby monkey. Even the baby monkey has the power to hold on to the mother monkey. The small kitten can't do anything. Just says mew mew mew, and knows that the mother will come, and the mother will take it by the back of the neck and pull it and place it somewhere. And wherever the mother places it, then the kitten is happy. It may be in the fireplace in the ashes. It may be on the master's bed. It may be anywhere else on the pillow. But the kitten is equally happy because my mother put me there. Yeah? So it's a very beautiful spiritual attitude. So the motherhood in India has been raised to this spiritual level, I think, to an extent that we don't find in other traditions. Generally, God is worshipped as Father. We have a few exceptions. There are some Christian traditions where great emphasis is placed on the love of Mother Mary. But again, she's the mother. She's the mother of Christ. She's not worshipped really as God herself. But we find this in India to a great degree, this worship of the Divine Mother, God as Mother, and prominent in different parts of India. I think perhaps especially in Bengal, huh? Probably a little bit more than in other places, although we have it. North India, South India, many different traditions are there, but there's uh, so much emphasis on the worship of Mother Kali and Durga. Uh, that this is a very prominent feature of the way God is worshipped in Bengal, especially, and in India in general. We have it in other places. In the south with Lalita, Tripura Sundari, and then north with Durga Parvati, you find many temples to all of them. But we find it very, very prominent in Bengal, and we see that in the life of Sri Ramakrishna and some of the great mystic saints, Ram Prasad, Kamalakanta, and others, who wrote so many beautiful songs to the Divine Mother. We also see it in social relations, the importance of the mother within the family setting. In India, it has a very high position. Swami Vivekananda was very fond of saying that in the West, the ideal woman is the wife. She's seen in that relationship. And in India, the woman is seen as the mother first and as the wife second. He said in one place, the ideal womanhood of India is motherhood, that marvelous, unselfish, all suffering, ever forgiving mother. The highest of all feminine types in India is mother, higher than wife. Wife and children may desert a man, but his mother never. And then again, he said the ideal woman in India is the mother first and the mother last. The word woman calls up to the mind of the Hindu motherhood, and God is called mother. As children, every day when we are boys, we have to go early in the morning with a little cup of water and place it before the mother, and mother dips her toe into it and we drink it. In the West, the woman is wife. The idea of womanhood is concentrated there as the wife. To the ordinary man in India, the whole force of womanhood is concentrated in motherhood. In the Western home, the wife rules. In an Indian home, the mother rules. So there's a long tradition in India of putting the woman first. Huh? Even in the Upanishads, what do we read? Matri Devo Bhava, Pitri Devo Bhava, not the other way around. Huh? And we're used to hearing brothers and sisters. Huh? When we introduced something, when Swamiji spoke at the Parliament of Religions, it was sisters and brothers of America. It was the women who came first. So there's something special about the role that women and mothers play from the social point of view, from the spiritual point of view also. One of my fondest memories is when I met one of the great monks of our order, Swami Sharadesharanji, known as Gopesh Maharaj. He was one of the uh, few monks, I would say, that was generally recognized to be not just a God realized soul, but it's a saintly figure. That you saw him and you just felt the tremendous devotion within his heart. And at the same time, he was a great jnani and also a highly austere person. So he had these three qualities, very rare to find, that tremendous austerity. He led such a simple, austere life, and at the same time, very brilliant, very scholarly also, but you would never know it. He was so humble. And to see him in the temple doing japa, every time I saw him, his hands were folded like this. He was just the image of devotion. One of my close friends in India, not that I got to spend that much time with him, but his name is Anup Maharaj. Anup Maharaj was his attendant for a long time. And I'm just now reading something that he wrote in this Prachin Sadhuder Kotha, this is a book I talk about all of the time. There's something like 75 pages that he wrote. He was his attendant. He was his attendant for, I think, at least 10 years. And it's interesting that he took off to, the young monk, took off to renounce the world and happened to be in Vrindavan and wanted to see the mission. He wasn't really a devotee or anything. And he came, the first person he saw was Gopesh. And somehow something clicked and he ended up joining there and he ended up being his attendant. And even when it was time for him to go to training center, he said, no, I'm not leaving. He stayed with Gopesh Maharaj to the very end. Now, I say all of this because when I was in India for a year uh, doing research. I was still a student at that time, 1978 and 79. And I saw Gopesh Maharaj twice. The second time, I had already decided that I would join the order. So I got to meet with him in private and to seek his blessings for joining, to tell him of my intention and everything. And I remember very clearly, he only asked me one question: is there someone to look after your mother? No. See, he was a disciple of Holy Mother and an attendant of Holy Mother for a long time. So we had that tremendous love and this feeling of debt and obligation to the mother. I think partly he didn't ask about my father, huh? Just about my mother. Partly, I think it's because in India, very often there was a larger age difference between the husband and the wife. So very often the husband would die and the wife would be a widow, and uh, so he wanted to know if that happened, who would look after my mother. So I said yes, Maharaj. there's someone to look after my mother. And then he said, oh, okay. He didn't fully bless me. I think silently. I hope he blessed me to join. But that was the only thing he said. Then he said, okay, very good. So this obligation that the child has to the mother is really a lifelong thing. And we all have that obligation. There's one exception, traditionally one exception, and that is those who renounce the world, who take to the life of sannyasa. In the very orthodox circles, and I would say traditional, not just orthodox, traditionally, the monk uh, severs all relations with the family. And one of the traditions is that they won't see any family member for 12 years. After 12 years, they can go back home one time. We know this was the case with Swamiji's grandfather. Swamiji's grandfather renounced the world after the birth of his son. This was one of the traditions that if you were married, that at least make sure that there's a son to look after the mother before you renounce the world. So he did that, and he came back after 12 years once. He has to see the family, and they tried to keep him there. They tried to keep him locked up in the room, even. And silently, he just sat and meditated, refused to take food or anything. And then they thought, what's the point? So they left the door open, and then he was gone the next day, something like that. So this is the tradition. But I'm going to tell all of you a little secret now. It's not always followed, especially in our order, that many of the monks kept some association with parents, especially the mother. We have cases where uh, young monks were sent home. Even they found out that the mother was ill, so they said, "Okay, now you go home and nurse the mother. She's better. You can come back and join." Incidents like that, and we'll find that some of the greatest sannyasis that we know of broke this rule and had some type of special relationship with their mother. So I want to talk about that a little bit. But first, I'll talk about it. Latu Maharaj. Latu Maharaj. So all of the monastic members of direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, they all looked upon Holy Mother as their mother, of course, but they all had their own mothers. Latu Maharaj was an orphan. I personally don't know very much about how old he was when his parents died, or even if they, in India, sometimes we call an orphan someone whose parents have to give up the child, that they're too poor or some reason like that. But in any event, he was being raised by his uncle. So his relationship with Holy Mother was a little different. She really played the role of his mother, and he had a special relationship with her. Even the other direct disciples didn't have access to Holy Mother the way he did. That she would remain veiled before them, except sometimes in Jaganbati, but he had complete access. So he really felt that she was his actual mother. Now, there's a very beautiful incident that took place in the home of Balaram Bose. Balaram Bose, of course, the great household older disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, that Holy Mother was staying there at the time. Latu Maharaj was also staying. He was staying on the ground floor room. She was upstairs. And she was about to leave for Jaganbati. So all of the devotees came. The other monks who were there, they all came to see Holy Mother off, to make pranam, to wish her a good trip and everything. And Latu Maharaj simply stayed in his room. He was a little, not eccentric exactly, but he had his own ways of doing things. So he's in his room. Everyone is wondering where is Latu Maharaj, and they see he's pacing back and forth, and they can hear him muttering, "Who is mother or father to a monk? He is free from all attachment in Maya." So he's saying this again, and Holy Mother was outside the room. She could hear it. Now, the point that I want to make is that uh, Holy Mother understood this attitude, and that this attitude wasn't really the attitude of Latu Maharaj. He was trying to convince himself as this. So anyhow, Holy Mother came down, and she heard Latu Maharaj speaking that way, and she said, "My child, it is all right if you don't accept me." Huh? Then immediately Latu Maharaj, he ran from the room, fell at Holy Mother's feet, weeping uncontrollably. And Holy Mother also started weeping. And then Latu Maharaj, he's so simple. He took his from his own cloth and starts wiping the tears from Holy Mother's eyes. So such a beautiful scene. And then he said to her, "You are going to father's house. Please don't weep. You will return soon." Okay, so anyhow, this is not too much. All of the monks of our order had this special relationship with Holy Mother. We'll see that the Swamiji had a special relationship with his own mother. Some of the others, Swami Sharadanandi also, many of them had to look after their mothers. Uh, One of the factors, of course, was that there wasn't much of a tradition of this Orthodox sannyasa in Bengal at the time. I mentioned this at a different time, but especially according to the Shankaracharya, with all of the Orthodox rules and things. So they didn't follow these things so seriously at that time. But I want to talk about some of the very special cases that we have. As I say, those who were the greatest examples of renunciation. Some of them kind of broke these rules when it came to their own mother. Now I'm talking about Shankaracharya, Chaitanya Deva, and of course we'll get to Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda. So, as part of my ode to motherhood today, I want to talk a little bit about these four great souls. One thing that they all had in common was that the fathers died young and the mothers were widows. Huh? This is very curious how this happened with all of them. That Shankaracharya was probably just 5, 6, 7, something like that. When we know about this incident, his father had already died, and he was the only son. So just uh, this, of course, is a very special thing. If he's the only son and takes the sannyasa, then the family line stops. There's no other son to look after the mother. But uh, he felt this intense renunciation even at that very young age. And he wanted his mother to grant him permission. He wouldn't leave the world, take sannyasa, unless he had the permission of his mother, because he had no interest in marriage or anything. He had these samskaras. He was a special soul. He wasn't an ordinary soul. So he, from a very early age, he felt that longing to renounce everything, but he wouldn't do it without her consent, and she wasn't willing. The only son, and a boy, such a young boy. So what happened one day? This took place in Kaladi. I went there many years ago. We have a small ashram there in Kerala, in Kaladi, and it's within walking distance of the place where Shankaracharya was born, and that river is still there where this incident took place. That he was bathing one day. His mother was there watching, and the crocodile caught hold of him. So he thought that he was going to die. Mother also thought that this would be the end. And there's a tradition called apat sannyasa, that at the very end, when one is in great danger, perhaps one may die, that one can take sannyasa. To die is sannyasi. So he said, "Mother, at least grant me that." So what could she do? So she said, "Yes." Immediately the crocodile let go. Huh? That it was some type of play, part of that lila. Huh? So he had taken that vow, and she had given her permission, and so nothing left to do uh, um, but become a sannyasin, become a monk at that time. But he consoled his mother, and he said that he promised to be by her side at her death, and also that he would conduct the funeral rites. Now, this is forbidden for a sannyasin. The sannyasin, before taking vows, will do the shraddha ceremony, both for himself and for parents, because he won't be able to do it later. Others will have to do it, but symbolically, we'll do it that way. And they're not supposed to participate in any of these things. But there was no other son to do it for her, and then he only promised this. So even though this was forbidden by the Orthodox tradition, now he's traveling all through India, writing his commentaries, to starting the monastic order, opening temples, doing all sorts of things. Somehow he knew that his mother was on her deathbed. So he got there in time, and he remembered his pledge, of course, to his mother. He was there when she was on her deathbed, and he himself built a funeral pyre and performed the final rites. And all of the other Orthodox people were very much against it. He didn't care. He did it also. So he fulfilled that debt to his mother. Now we get to the story of Mahaprabhu Chaitanya Deva. This is very, very touching. There's uh, a whole series of songs that have been written about this Nimai Sannyas, the taking of the vows of renunciation by Chaitanya Deva. We had it performed here once, many years ago, Mandira. You remember Mandira and the and in the center, the what is it, recreation center, down the street. Anyhow, when this is done and performed, you will find people outright weeping. It is a very, very touching scene about how Chaitanya Deva took sannyas. He was only 24 years old at the time. He had uh, he was one of 10 children, and of these, 8 of them died. Right? And his older brother also left the world. He renounced the world. He was a sannyasi. So here, this Nimai, that was what he was called in youth. He was the only one there. There was no one else to look after the mother. Her husband was gone many years earlier, and no other family members. But what could he do? The Chaitanya Deva. Uh, Before that, he was a very proud scholar. He was a great Sanskrit scholar and no interest in spirituality or anything. But he took a trip to Gaya to do Shraddha ceremony for his father, and he happened to meet this Ishwara Puri, the great saintly soul, and got initiated, and some transformation took place. So he felt this intense call, an intense desire for renunciation, this call to renounce everything. And so he told his mother. And of course, we can only imagine how his mother felt. In those days, even today to a certain extent, if a mother hears that a child wants to become a sannyasi, they feel that he's gone, that they've lost the son, and there won't be any family, grandchildren, and all of that. So, it's a very heartrending thing. But what Chaitanya Deva did, he said that uh, I will go and live in Puri. It's close enough. The devotees will come. They'll go back and forth. You'll get news of me. Whenever you want to see me, you'll have my vision. So this was the promise that he made to his mother. Now, when we get to uh, Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda, we'll see that his devotion to mother is even stronger, and that even the separation of distance wasn't there. That they stayed with their mothers and everything. So we'll get to Sri Ramakrishna. His mother was named Chandramani Devi. She was very simple and pious Brahmin woman from a village. We can just imagine, and with that loving mother's heart, so simple that all sorts of what we would call superstitions or visions and things, every these were daily things for her. And she looked after the worship. The deity was Raghuveer, the image of Rama, as her own child. And when her husband, Khudiram, went to Gaya, see how many things take place there in Gaya. Chaitanya Deva also had that experience there. When he was there, he had a vision that Godadhar is the image of Vishnu from Gaya, would be born as his son. But mother also had a dream, and she told her husband, listen, when you went to Gaya one night, I had a wonderful dream. I saw a luminous being lying on my bed. At first, I thought it was you. Then I realized that no human being could have that kind of beauty. When I awoke, I felt that being was still in the bed. Then she went on to say that she thought maybe it was a divine being. Then she thought, no, maybe it was a thief. She was very simple. Huh? She didn't know who it was. Then she said, I had a little quarrel with somebody the other day. Maybe that person came. So she didn't know exactly what it was. And when she told her friends, they all laughed at her and said, no, it was just a dream. Nobody really came at that time. And they said, don't tell others. They will think you're going senile. But then she also told her husband another experience she had. Another day, I was standing in front of the Jugi Shiva temple. There's a small Shiva temple just outside of the compound. at Kamarpur. Yogis, or this is a weaver caste there, so a temple for them, but then anyone could go. And was talking with Dhani. Dhani was one of the blacksmith caste women, but she was friendly with him. It was one of her friends. She's actually the one who gave Sri Ramakrishna his first alms when he was a Bhikshamata, when he had his sacred fed ceremony. So she was standing there with him. Then she said, "Suddenly I saw a divine light emanating from the image of Shiva. It filled the temple and rushed toward me like a wave. Stupefied with fear and wonder, I fell unconscious. Later, when I regained consciousness with Dhani's help, I told her my experience. At first, she was amazed, but then she said, 'You had an epileptic fit.' Huh? From then on, I have had the feeling that the light is still on in my womb and that I am pregnant. When I mentioned this to Dhani and Prasanna, they scolded me and called me foolish, mad, and so on." Then to her husband, she's saying this. "Well, what do you think about it? Did I have that vision by God's grace, or was it all a delusion? Even now, I feel that I am with child." So, of course, that was Sri Ramakrishna when he was born after that. Now, uh, she also suffered the loss of her husband, and one by one, the other two sons passed away. So there was no reason for her to stay there, and she had this special love, of course, for Sri Ramakrishna. So she moved to Dakshineshwar, and this was around the time that Totapuri came to Dakshineshwar. So this is during that time when he was about to take sannyasa. So we have the same situation there. Not only does he have his mother, but she's living there. So the Totapuri said, "I want to initiate you into Vedanta." And they said, "Dvaita Vedanta. But in order to do that, you have to take the vows of sannyasa." So Sri Ramakrishna said, "Okay, let me check with my mother." That meant the Divine Mother in the temple. So that was okay. And he said, "But there are two problems. One is that I married, I had my wife." And he said, "Doesn't matter. It's okay." And the other, he said, "My old mother is living here with me. If she finds out that I took sannyasa, it'll break her heart. So it'll have to be done in secret." And so they did that without letting his mother know. He took the vows of sannyasa. He never wore the ochre cloth. Now, partly because he was a Paramahamsa. He didn't need any type of outward signs of anything, but I think also partly for his mother's sake. And his mother lived right in the Nahabad. That's where Holy Mother lived when she was in Dakshineshwar at that time. And she was a very simple woman. She did start to get senile towards the end. One of the nice stories about her is that when around noon there was a nearby jute factory, a jute mill, and the noon whistle would go, so all the workers could stop and have lunch. So she thought that this was the blowing of the Kanchi Vaikuntha, and it was time for Narayan and Lakshmi to have their lunch. So she would never take food until she heard that. Now, problem was Sundays nobody worked, and holidays, so they had to try to convince her to eat. She said, "But they haven't had their lunch yet." She was very simple. So somehow they would have to convince her to do that. Now, she actually lived for 12 years. I'm always surprised when I think about it because we don't hear too much about that. I don't know how many people really consider that fact that he kept his mother for 12 years there, even when we think that here he's going through all this divine madness and this and that and all these different sadhanas, which is true, but still, he would see her every day, look after her, care for her, sit with her when she ate, showed so much love and affection and attention to her for the last 12 years of her life, from 1864 to 1876. There's another story about how simple she was, a very nice story. The Mathur Babu, we know about him that he was a wealthy patron. He was the son-in-law of Rani Rashmani, the wealthy patron of Sri Ramakrishna, who would do anything for him. And Sri Ramakrishna was such a person of renunciation, he wouldn't accept anything. He didn't need anything. So one day, Mathur Babu thought, let me do something for his mother. Huh? So he went to her and said, Granny, whatever you want, you ask for anything. I'll give you anything. She could have asked for anything. But she thought and said, No, I have everything that I need. What can you possibly give me? I said, No, I asked for something. So she said, Okay. In order to brush your teeth, huh? She used to take a little tobacco and burn it and turn it into ash. It was a kind of a common thing in those days. She said, Can you get me a few paisas of tobacco leaf so I can have it for my teeth? Then my mother Bobby said, Oh, Baba. He said, Only a mother like this can give birth to a son like Sri Ramakrishna with that type of pronunciation. The final scene of Sri Ramakrishna's life, of his mother's life, is something very, very beautiful. But well, before I get to that, one other incident, which just shows us, it shows us his reverence for his mother. You remember that one day Holy Mother was rubbing oil, massaging Thakur's feet, and there's a question came into her mind. So she asked him, "How do you look upon me?" Hmm? She was much younger. Of course, she was his wife and everything, but they didn't have that husband-wife relationship. So how do you look upon me? Now we know he looked upon her as the Divine Mother. Right? So he said, the mother who was in the temple and the one who's massaging my feet are one and the same. But he didn't stop there. He said, and the mother who gave birth to this body who is in the Nahabat. Huh? I see all of you as one and the same. So he gave the same status to his mother at that time, just to show the type of reverence that he had. So in 1876, Chandramani Devi was then about 85, and as I said, living in the Nabat Dakshineshwar, and her health began to fail. And Thakur had the feeling that she wouldn't live very long. So every day he went to spend some time with her, and just to cheer her up, talking about the early days and come up before childhood days and different incidents and everything. And so he looked after her. He served her very beautifully at that time and did personal service for her and everything. Then one morning, they saw that she hadn't left her room at her usual time. She used to get up and leave the room at 8 o'clock in the morning. So they carefully unlocked the door and found her practically at the point of death. So they nursed her. They gave her Ganges water for 3 days until the final moment arrived. Then we have some beautiful actual paintings and things of this very beautiful scene where uh, Thakur's mother, where Thakur's mother was taken to the banks of the Ganges, and they were all there together. And Sri Ramakrishna, he took flowers and bell leaves and smeared some santal paste on and offered them at his mother's feet, just at the very end. And then she very quietly passed away. So Thakur fulfilled the duty of the son, even though he was a sannyasin, of course. Now, we get again to this idea of the funeral rites and Shraddha ceremony and all of these things. Sri Ramakrishna had his nephew Ramlal, who could do all of these things. As a sannyasin, he wasn't supposed to do it, of course, so he had Ramlal do it. But then he still felt some doubt that he should do something for his mother. So there's something called tarpan. Very simple thing. You order water, or offer some water, Ganges water. So he tried several times, and the water slipped through his fingers. He couldn't do that offering. It's called Galita Hasta. And he asked Ramlal or one of the others, someone there about that, and they said yes, because it's forbidden for a sannyasin to do these. We find in Thakur's life things manifested themselves in such a literal way that it wasn't his decision, but the hands itself wouldn't cooperate. But still, he had that desire to be able to offer this atonement. Now we'll get to the final example of special love that Sannyasi had for his mother, and this is Swami Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda, he was a Yati Raja, he was the king, he was the lion, he was the fearless one. He was actually a very soft-hearted mama's boy. He had this tremendous affection for his mother, almost unbelievable affection for his mother, and she deserved it. She was a very wonderful woman. Uh, Her name was Bhuvaneshwari Devi, and Swamiji always said that she was the most important influence in his life. Uh, he had a interesting relationship with his father. He learned a lot from his father. His father was extremely charitable, but not so spiritual, exactly. Very liberal-minded and charitable and everything. But when it came to spirituality and religion, he said he learned everything sitting on the lap of his mother. Very typical. The child will hear all the stories from Mahabharata, Ramayana, the Bhagavata, all of these things, sitting on the lap of his mother. So this is how Swamiji got his training in the very early days. He was very young. She was also a great devotee of Shiva. You know the story that she gave birth to a son who died, and then had three daughters, and even one of them died. So there was no son. Again, this idea, there's no son in the family who will carry on the family line. It's interesting that there were ultimately three sons, and none of them married, so there was no one to carry on the family line. But in any event, she had this great longing to have a son, and as she was a great worshiper of Shiva, she prayed to Shiva. And one of the uh, aunts of the Datta of her husband's side of the family lived in Varanasi, in Benares. And so she requested her every Monday she would go to this Vireshwara Shiva temple there and make special offerings that a son would be born. So she really believed that it was through the grace of Lord Shiva that Swamiji was born. And I mentioned Swamiji's grandfather. His name was Durga Prasad. That he was the one who renounced the world, became a sannyasin. They all thought that this young baby resembled his grandfather, and they wanted to name him Durga Prasad. But Swamiji's mother said no, that he'll be named Vireshwar. He was born through the grace of Vireshwar Shiva, and he was called Billy for short. And then later, I don't know how he came to get the name of Narendranath or Naren. We find in India all different variety sets of names that there's even a name from the horoscope that some can have. So you can have three different names and then a nickname on top of that. You know, but so he was given that name Vireshwar. Now, the big crisis in Swamiji's life came again when the father died. We see there's such a common thing because at that time uh, he had met Ramakrishna. He had been with him for 2 or 3 years already, and he was very well aware of the fact that Thakur wanted him to renounce the world. Not only that, but to be the bearer of his message. Not only that, but to be the one to hold everyone together and be the glue that kept this new monastic order together. So he had a tremendous burden from the side of Sri Ramakrishna to really do his work in the world, to be his instrument. At the same time, he had a tremendous debt to his family because what happened was when the father died, the father was overly generous and supported all of his worthless relatives. It was a huge joint family. If you go to the house, I think there are 50 rooms in that house, something like that. A huge family, joint family. And half of them were lazy or had bad habits. Some of them drank, all sorts of different things. And he had given his money. He was actually in debt, even though he was an attorney. He made good money. When he died, nobody cared for anything. They just wanted to take over the whole house and kick the rest of them out. And there was no money coming in. Swamiji was the oldest son, and was still a student. He was preparing for his law exams and everything. And so, if he renounced the world at that time, then who would look after the family? So uh, hard to imagine the pull on both sides with a tremendous love and devotion for his mother and that tremendous love and devotion for Sri Ramakrishna. This great longing for God realization and this realization that he was born to do Thakur's work. Thakur told him many times that I'll live in you afterwards. That you'll be the one who will carry the message and everything. So this is something that never left Swamiji. Of course, he decided to renounce the world, but this feeling that he didn't fulfill his duty to his mother, that he caused suffering to his mother, it was always very close to the surface of his mind. So he never forgot that throughout his whole life, this responsibility to his mother, and he made many attempts to do whatever he could for his mother's sake. If we go through the complete works of Swamiji, through the recorded conversations, reminiscences, and some of the letters that he wrote, we see how often he spoke about his mother with the highest type of praise. He said, "It was my mother who inspired me to this. Her character was a constant inspiration to my life and work. The love which my mother gave to me has made me what I am, and I owe a debt to her that I can never repay. I believe whatever religious culture I have, I owe to that. It was consciously that my mother brought me into the world to be what I am." That means her prayers to Lord Shiva. "Whatever little good impulse I have was given to me by my mother, and consciously, not unconsciously." When Swamiji renounced the world after Thakur passed away, and he traveled throughout India, on the one hand, he was oblivious to everything. That where were the other monks? What was happening to the Bharanavar Mutt? He was in search of God, and to have that fully established in the highest type of God vision, and at the same time, this idea of his mission, this idea of relieving the poverty of India, all of these things possessed him. He was obsessed with all of these things, but at the same time, he always had his mother in his mind. One of his disciples was the Maharaja of Khetri. The Khetri is not far from Delhi, with a beautiful center. Now, it was actually the palace of the Maharaja, this Raja Ajit Singh. He played a very important role. Swamiji actually stayed with him for a long time, and they were about the same age. And uh, very tragically, he died young. They both died at the age of 39. He died a little bit before Swamiji. He was, there was some building that was being constructed, and he was overseeing the construction on the roof. And either some intrigue, palace intrigue, he got pushed or he fell, but anyhow, he died at that time. But he's the one probably told Swamiji, "You keep this name Vivekananda," because Swamiji tried different names at different times. He was Satchidananda Swami. He was Vidishananda Swami at different times, but also Vivekananda. And we see Swamiji with his turban. This is the Rajasthani style, and he learned this from this Ajit Singh, this Raja Ajit Singh. So Swamiji stayed with him longer than any other place during this pilgrimage period. There, he stayed on 3 separate visits. Very wonderful place. I went there a few years back, and now they're fixing up the whole thing, renovating the whole thing. It's a big project, a very nice place to visit, not far from Delhi, as they say. So he stayed with him. He wrote many letters to him, and he confided in him his concern for his mother. So this Raja obviously had plenty of money, very wealthy man. So he arranged for 100 rupees every month to be sent to his mother. We know that others also, very secretly and very quietly, M sent money to Swamiji's mother. M was unbelievable. He was so humble and kept himself in the background so much. He very secretly sent money to Bharanagar Mutt. He sent money to Holy Mother, and he sent money to Swamiji's mother. And he said, "Please make sure he never finds out. He'll be furious if he hears about it." Swamiji was a little proud that way, but he didn't mind with this Maharaja of Khetri. So he sent 100 rupees every month to Swamiji's mother. And then he died. So then again, Swamiji is so concerned. Uh, it's interesting that some of the Western disciples, that Sarah Bull and others, uh, they also had some very close feelings to Swamiji's mother, and also helped and I think gave some money as well. When Swamiji was traveling in South India before going to the West. So remember again, and now the whole mind is filled with this idea of he has to go to Chicago, the Parliament of Religions, represent Sri Ramakrishna, all of these things. And yet he had a dream one night that his mother had died. And Swamiji was not a superstitious person. He didn't believe in all these things. It's a dream. It's just a dream. But he couldn't get this idea out of his mind. And he sent a wire to Calcutta to find out the truth. He certainly could never have left India to go to the West before he found out. If his mother had died, it would have been horrible for him. So they sent a wire, but he also didn't want to wait. He was very anxious to find out. So Alasinga was there, his one of his chief disciples from the south, and they found a fortune teller in Chennai, and they went to this fortune teller, and he was legitimate because he looked at Swamiji. He told him all about his ancestors and his past life and all sorts of different things, and he reassured him about his mother. And then after that, he said only after that was he willing to go to the West. There was another uh, Haridas V. Haridas Desai. He, I think, was a Dewan, huh? He's a minister to one of the Maharajas from Gujarat, right? Ah, yes, your place, your birthplace. Yes, I went there. A very nice place. Yeah. So Swamiji also got a lot of help from him. He was a very, very helpful person. And he had gone to see Swamiji's mother. Swamiji told him, he didn't keep these things a secret. He said, if you go to Calcutta, could you please visit my mother? Then he wrote to him, Dear Dewanji Sahib, your last letter reached me a few days ago. You had been to see my poor mother and brothers. I'm glad you did, but you've touched the only soft place in my heart. You ought to know, Dewanji, that I am no hard hearted brute. If there's any being I love in the whole world, it is my mother. When Swamiji was in Chicago, there was so much jealousy, and people resented his popularity and power, and how much people respected him. That all sorts of rumors started about him. There was one Pratap Majumdar, who was a Brahmo, who seemed to have great respect for Sri Ramakrishna and wrote something about him, but he also came to the West. And apparently, he also had some type of jealousy against Swamiji. Now, we know that Swamiji was studying for the law exams. He was before he renounced the world. He was going to become a lawyer like his father. That number one. Number two, he was a member of the Brahmo Samaj, and the Brahmo Samaj used to put on these religious plays or spiritual plays, and they would all take part in those things. Swamiji also did that. He was a good actor. He was a beautiful singer. We know all of that. So anyhow, this rumor was spread that this person that you're thinking is this great sannyasi is a lawyer. Number one. Number two, he's an actor on the stage. Yeah? So Swamiji said that people can say anything they want. I really don't mind. But he said that if word got back to my mother, then how it would hurt her. That was the only thing that bothered him about that he was thinking how pained his mother would be if she heard all of that. When Swamiji came back from the West, he went straight to see his mother as early as possible. The first thing he did was he laid his head on his mother's lap. So this was the tremendous love that Swamiji had for his mother. After coming back from the West, Swamiji really uh, had a desire to pull himself away from the work, to almost lead a retired type of life, and even thought of just living with his mother at that time, having a little place and everything with her. And he said that uh, there were a couple things that he wanted to do for his mother. And one was to take her on pilgrimage, and the other to see her settled in her own place. He wrote a letter, a beautiful letter to Sarah Bull. It is becoming clearer to me that I lay down all concerns of the month. It means the Ramakrishna order and the new monastery, and for a time go back to my mother. She has suffered much through me. I must try to smooth her last days. Do you know, this is exactly what the great Shankaracharya himself had to do. We often think that Swamiji and Shankaracharya, that same genius of Shankaracharya was manifest in Swamiji. Swamiji made a great statement once that the ideal man would be the combination of the brilliant intellect of Shankaracharya and the heart of Buddha. And we see both of them in Swamiji. He was that perfect man. So Swamiji fulfilled that one desire to take his mother on pilgrimage, and they went to what was then East Bengal and Assam, and he took her to this some of the important places, Langulband and Chandranath. There's a little hill there. On my very first visit to Bangladesh, this was in 1992. I made a point to go to all of the places that Swamiji took his mother to. So that was kind of part of the pilgrimage. And then they also went to Shillong and to Kamakya, to the very famous temple to the Divine Mother there. He wanted to take his mother to Rameshwaram also, but that was never fulfilled. Now, the one thing we feel in the order also that when we talk about motherhood, that we can't forget Holy Mother, because Holy Mother was the mother of the order. She was the Sangha Janani, and if you do a survey, if you go to all of the monks of the order and you ask them very privately, any special feeling for a Holy Mother or Thakur, you'll find most will say Holy Mother. That giving up their own mother, not giving up, of course, but renouncing everything, that the Holy Mother really played that role. For some of the direct disciples, Sri Ramakrishna played the role of mother. This is also interesting. Say Mahapurush Maharaj in M, some of those who had lost their mother when they were young, they looked upon Sri Ramakrishna's mother, but in general, all of them looked upon Holy Mother also in that way. So she is the mother of our monastic order. This is also why there's so much special reverence for, I think, motherhood in our tradition because of the Holy Mother. Now, some of you know that my own mother passed away just 1 month ago. So this is my first Mother's Day without her. And I trust me, I'm not comparing myself to any of the people that I talked about, but I also had the privilege of being able to serve my mother. At the end, I was with her for the last couple of weeks and by her side every moment, got to serve her and got to be with her when she drew her. With all of this, I offer my special love and salutations and devotion to all of our women devotees that also uh, really give me and the other monks that same love that mothers give to children. So, with great gratitude, I offer my love and salutations to all of you. Okay, then let me close. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina Sarve Santu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kashti Dukha Bhag Bhavet Om Shanti 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 Hari Om. May all beings be happy. May all be free from disease. May all realize only good things in their lives. May no one suffer from misery. Om peace, peace, peace be unto you.